Welcome to the I Am One podcast, where we talk to perinatal mental health advocates, professionals, and educators supporting the mission of Postpartum Support International. We're not afraid to ask our guests about the hardest parts of pregnancy and postpartum because we know that PSI has tools and resources to help in every situation, and everyone should know about them.
Whether you are among the 1 in 5 moms, 1 in 10 dads, one of many trans or non-binary parents, or you're one professional or advocate committed to helping folks in need, you are also one of us.
I'm your host, Danny Giddens, and I am 1 in 5. I didn't know what to call what I was experiencing after becoming a parent and felt too scared at the time to speak up.
Not anymore. Now she won't stop talking about it. Hi, I'm your co-host, Emily Jankowski. I'm also 1 in 5, and I want you to know that mental health complications are common, but they aren't normal.
There's something powerful in knowing I am one of many. Whether you're already connected to the perinatal mental health world, looking for new ways to support parents and families, or just want to hang out with us in your earbuds, we are so glad that you tuned in.
Of course they want to hang out with us. We're lovely. Seriously though, the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this pod are the speaker's own. Tuning into this podcast is, spoiler alert, not a replacement for therapy, but PSI can help you find a therapist. We could also help you find a psychiatrist, a support group, or Waldo.
Emily, Waldo? Come on! We don't know where Waldo is.
Okay, fine. PSI help seekers can find peer support and resources in their area.
At PSI, we want you to know you are not alone, you are not to blame, and with help, you will be well. On today's episode, we're sitting down with Aaisha Alvi, a postpartum psychosis advocate, a writer, and she also has a brand new title, a published author. We'll hear all about her lived experience with postpartum psychosis on 2 separate occasions. We'll also chat about the importance of education and awareness because Aaisha wasn't diagnosed until seeing a 6th, yeah, you got it, a 6th doctor. And finally, we'll discuss how postpartum psychosis is treatable and does not have to end in tragedy. If you're interested in learning more about postpartum psychosis, be sure to check out the show notes for links to a plethora of resources, and do make sure to check out Aaisha's book, A Mom Like That, a Memoir of Postpartum Psychosis, available online in audio format and in a bookstore near you. So without any further ado, please sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode with our friend Aaisha. Aaisha, welcome to the podcast studio. We are so thrilled to be spending some of our time with you on this fine evening to talk all about perinatal mental health, including some of your own lived experience and a little something special that you have been working on for a while now. So thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's a wonderful opportunity.
Yeah. Before we hop in, I just want to kind of touch on the fact that after folks recover from perinatal mental health complications, they often wonder, what can I do with this experience? So, some people discover that there's this whole perinatal mental health world, this advocacy world, and they decide that they want to volunteer with organizations like PSI. I think that is relatable to all 3 of us. Some people like to share their stories on podcasts. Thanks so much. That's you right now. We're so glad that you're doing that right now. And some people write books, and you've just done that. So
She's a triple threat.
yeah, she totally is the triple threat. So with that little tease and without any further ado, I think we should just jump right in. And if you would you please give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are?
My name is Aaisha Alvi, and I'm a mom of 2, one here and one that didn't quite make it into this world. And you'll hear more about that in my story. I'm from Canada. I consider myself a postpartum psychosis awareness advocate, a writer, and just published a book. So I'm an author now as well.
Yeah, you are.
It's exciting.
Would you have identified as an author or a writer prior to writing this book? Was that sort of part of who you were all along, or is that new?
I think that's more new.
Cool.
Yeah.
Writing is therapy.
Yes.
I had been working on this book for quite a while. So,
Yeah.
in that way, I would consider myself a writer. But, after it officially came out, that I would really say that's the case. Yeah.
Writing is such a complicated art form because if you're a painter, you can just paint and paint and paint. and you don't have to be a published painter to consider yourself a painter,
Ooh.
where to be a writer, like, why are we gatekeeping that? Anyway, I digress.
You don't have to be published to be a writer, Emily.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay. So, Aaisha, can you tell us what role perinatal mental health disorders played in your personal life? I think I have some idea, but I want to hear it from you.
So, to begin, I wanted to point out, and it's going to come out later, that the perinatal mental health disorder that played a role in my life was postpartum psychosis. I had it twice, after my child was born, and the second time after a miscarriage. I guess, like for me, it first started after my first pregnancy, which I very much wanted. I always wanted kids and stuff. So, very soon after I gave birth, I started feeling depressed and super anxious. And I also started experiencing intrusive thoughts, which are very common in the postpartum period.
Totally.
Very soon after that, I started believing some strange things. And I had a number of strange beliefs, which are called delusions, when they're like a fixed belief that, you can't get rid of and they're not rooted in reality. And I kind of started thinking that my family was at risk of harming my baby. At one point, I kind of thought that my baby wasn't really a baby, but was a grown adult pretending to be a baby. And I thought my husband had some sinister motives to our kid. I had a bunch of other ones too, but I would say that those were the predominant ones. Because of these strange beliefs that I had the first time, even though I didn't really realize something was off, because, I really kind of believed all these things, my family noticed that I was, behaving oddly. And they tried to take me to the doctor like a couple of times, like 2 or 3 times, but I was never diagnosed. And one day, months later, I just spontaneously recovered. And it was at that point that I was like, whoa, like, what were those bizarre things I was thinking?
Yeah, for sure.
So that was like my first experience with postpartum psychosis. And for a bunch of years, I was kind of like too scared of having another baby, even though I really always thought of myself as having more children, more than one child. But I was really scared of that experience because I didn't know what that was all about. And eventually then, I was like, no, I want to have another baby. And I got pregnant, but I miscarried. And this time I started feeling depressed and anxious again. But what was different this time was that I recognized that I was feeling similar to how I had felt after my first pregnancy. And so I tried to get help right away by going to the doctor and kind of saying like, something's not right. I kept getting dismissed because providers unfortunately aren't properly trained to recognize the symptoms of postpartum psychosis.
Mm.
Yeah, so even though the second time I had more insight into my symptoms and I thought that something was seriously wrong and I kept trying to get help, my symptoms kept escalating and I started thinking strange things again. I started hearing voices telling me to do awful things. And, again, even though my family was like, whoa, like something's not right about her, and I was behaving super bizarrely, the real problem was that the doctors kept dismissing me. And it was eventually like the sixth doctor that I went to, who was a perinatal psychiatrist, that eventually diagnosed me with postpartum psychosis. And she retrospectively diagnosed me with having had it the first time after my first pregnancy as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a question about this because in reading both what happened after your daughter was born and after the miscarriage, it felt like, as the reader, that the symptoms felt more pervasive the second time around. Was that my interpretation or was that your experience?
No, it was far worse the second time. It was like
Mm.
really serious, severe the second time. I've talked to my perinatal psychiatrist about this. I think it was like that because I was untreated the first time. So
Mhm.
the way my psychiatrist put it was that your mind immediately went to that. Like, how we have neural pathways that we
Oh,
build? It was almost like it was there already.
It was like, oh, we've been here.
Yeah. And it just automatically went there. Yeah.
Mhm.
it's also very similar to like what happens to the physical body during pregnancy. Like the first pregnancy, you don't show for a while. The second pregnancy, you're like 6 months pregnant, 2 weeks in.
Yeah.
Like
Your body's like, oh, right. Okay.
we've done
I
this
remember this.
before.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So it was like that. And that she said that to have it like after a miscarriage of 3, 4 months, like to get that severe, it was because it was already ingrained in there and you hadn't gotten help the first time.
I was just thinking about not being diagnosed the first time. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the difference between intrusive thoughts and hallucinations. Sometimes people might think, oh gosh, those are intrusive thoughts. That happens commonly. But it was like they weren't intrusive thoughts that you were having.
Yeah, for sure. So intrusive thoughts are extremely common in all postpartum mood disorders, and apparently they happen to 90% of moms, including dads, in the postpartum period. So they're very common, and they're more like, they're just like random thoughts, or they could present as images too. Like they're like what if thoughts, like what if this terrible thing happens? Or they can present as images that kind of just pop up in your head like a hiccup. It's very random. You didn't want it, and that's why it's called intrusive. And I also experienced intrusive thoughts both times I had postpartum psychosis. And you're right, it did play a role in why I think I kept getting dismissed, because there's this common perception out there that the difference between kind of intrusive thoughts and hallucinations, there's this perception that if you're frightened by your thoughts, then they're like intrusive thoughts, as if you're not frightened by your hallucinations. But you can be frightened by your hallucinations. And that's what was happening to me. So I would say the difference between intrusive thoughts and hallucinations is the fact that intrusive thoughts feel real to the person, but hallucinations, visual hallucinations and auditory hallucinations are real to the person experiencing them. So, for example, when I had an intrusive thought, I knew, like, I had an intrusive thought of my daughter. I knew she wasn't actually out there. I didn't feel like I could touch her. You know what I mean? I knew it was a product or a byproduct of my mind. But when I had visual hallucinations, I actually tried to attack my visual hallucinations, punch and kick at them, because I actually thought they were out there in the outside environment.
Right.
So intrusive thoughts, at some level, you recognize they're a product or a byproduct of your mind, but hallucinations are just actually out there. Like you feel like you can touch it, experience it like that. And that misconception that, like, oh, this idea that, like, if you're frightened by your thoughts, you're not psychotic, that's a big thing, because I kept going in saying I was frightened, but I was frightened by my hallucinations.
I totally agree.
I think that that's a thing. And like a lot of times people will be like, oh, I think I'm hallucinating because, but that's like, if you recognize that that's your thought, it's an intrusive thought.
Okay.
Can I give a personal example?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I felt like I dealt with intrusive thoughts. They were always something that I was like trying to be hyper vigilant about. It was almost like human evolution was guiding me to like be vigilant about safety, right? It felt like it was outside of me, where when I was in the hospital postpartum with my first, I have 3, I did hear sounds and then see shadows moving across the wall that weren't there, like as though I was in a forest, right? Like shadows moving across the walls. I've talked to my psychiatrist about this, and she's like, I'm not going to say that that was psychosis for you, only because I know that you were under a lot of medications for the labor and delivery, right? So like some of it could have been the byproduct of that, and it didn't continue.
Yeah.
But there was this feeling that I was in the woods and hearing and seeing things that you would hear and see in the woods that were very normal.
But you were in the hospital.
But I was unable to move in the hospital bed. So yeah, I had a C-section.
Does she think that that was caused by the medications that you were given? Because medications can bring on sometimes.
Yes, that was her theory, was that because it didn't continue, that may have been why it happened for me.
Yeah, and it's frightening when you can't separate between what's real and what's not real. A result of what's going wrong in your mind, you actually believe that that's happening out there in reality.
Right, and to think about what I would have done and believed it was normal to do so, like I'm in the woods, right? It could be anything. If it's a hallucination and you believe that it's true, you're going to do what feels right and normal in the moment because you don't know that it's not.
Yes, exactly. And that's the thing, like people, like when I was like, punching and kicking at this hallucination that I was having, I must have looked really bizarre to people, like my husband and my parents, because I'm punching thin air. But when, when they went back and read my book, they were like, oh, like for sure. Like if they saw what I was seeing, then my actions
Oh.
make sense.
I just had an interesting analogy pop into my head. I was thinking, I don't know if you've ever used a VR headset, but like, let's say it's almost like having a VR headset on and you are looking around and you are seeing things that other people aren't seeing. And it is very real. But if somebody were just looking at you and you're reacting to this
Yes.
virtual world and they're not
Yes.
seeing it, it's like that, right?
Exactly. It's exactly like that. I've seen demonstrations where they simulate psychotic hallucinations for people using VR headsets.
Oh, dang. I thought that was an original thought. Shoot.
No, no.
I was going to be like, I am one podcast. Heard it here first.
Yeah, but no, that is an excellent example.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Aaisha. That's an interesting way to think about it for somebody that hasn't experienced psychosis, though.
I want to go back to something that you just said, because you said that when your family read the book,
Mm-hmm.
like they gained a new level of understanding of what was happening for you. But in the book,
Mm-hmm.
I'm really frustrated at them because they did not have the understanding then that they clearly do now.
And I'm sure they're lovely people. Hi.
Yeah.
Hi,
Right.
family.
Aisha's family, you're lovely, but you
Yes.
didn't know what you
didn't
didn't
know.
know.
It's okay. We didn't know either. So.
And you know what? For the longest time after, like, I needed a full year of therapy to reconcile that, because I really held on to a lot of resentment for a while toward them. And then it was my psychiatrist that kind of like pointed out, like, your husband comes into every single appointment. He's there to support you, all this stuff. And then that made me realize, and that's what kind of turned me into a postpartum psychosis awareness advocate, because it wasn't their fault. They really initially thought things were wrong with me, but the doctors dismissing me over and over again sent a message to them, a wrong message to them. And then that's why they were kind of like, well, like, you know what? Is she kind of like a hypochondriac? Is she exaggerating?
Mm-hmm.
And that's what really, like, I wanted to communicate the fact that the way that healthcare providers treat you can have an impact on the way your family and other people also treat you as a result, you know?
Yes.
They really thought initially something, I mean, they kept thinking something was wrong, but then they were like, well, if the doctors don't think anything is wrong, like, who are we to say?
Right. It also impacted how you treated yourself, because there were so many times that you were like, aha, see, I'm fine.
Yes.
Because you were getting that message.
Yes. And it was kind of like, oh, maybe I can talk myself out of it. You know what I mean? Because they think I'm fine. And that's why, like, I'm so big on creating awareness, because I really do believe this illness does not need to cause tragedy. It's so easily treatable that if people knew about it, nobody would have to die from it.
And I looked up the rate of, I think it was in the book, you compared it to like, or you talked somewhere about blood clots, right?
Yes.
That everyone knows about how to check for blood clots in your legs after birth,
Yeah.
which occur at the same rate of frequency
Yeah.
that psychosis does, but nobody tells anybody about that because they think that like it's suggestive. No one's going to voluntarily go, you know what sounds fun to me today? That's bananas.
Yeah. Or nobody's going to be frightened into developing postpartum psychosis because it's a medical condition.
Right.
Nobody's suddenly going to be like, oh, I heard about this, now I'm going to develop it. Like, you know what I mean? Nobody in my family, as a result of hearing about my experience, spontaneously developed it. It's something that out of all the postpartum mood and anxiety disorders, it has more of a biological basis than any of the other ones. So there's really some biological kind of thing going on. So people should be told about it so that they know about it and their families know about it and know to advocate for them.
Knowledge is empowering.
Absolutely. It's important to talk about. And I just want to ask you to help educate all of us. I mean, I think you've basically just touched on this. Sometimes people say, oh, postpartum psychosis is rare. And why is it so problematic to say that?
It's so problematic to say because when we say that something is rare, basically we're kind of communicating the idea that nobody needs to really know about it because it's not going to really happen. And I think that that's the message that a lot of healthcare providers get. Like, we're not really going to see this, so why dedicate any brain space to it? And it was so obvious that none of the healthcare providers I went to had dedicated any brain space to it, because I was literally going in telling them, like, I'm hearing voices. Is that normal? My psychiatrist in the aftermath was like, whoa, like, what is going on in these people's heads that they're literally hearing somebody saying they're hearing voices and they're like, you're okay.
Because their mindset was, it's rare. And that is problematic in itself.
Yes. And that's why, because we will not think about things that are rare because it's never going to happen. And that's why it's so wrong. And I hate to use that terminology.
Right. We don't want to say that.
Yeah, it
Yes.
occurs at the same incidence as cerebral palsy and Down syndrome. And we never say those things are rare because they're not.
Thanks for breaking that down.
I actually also think that we say that it's rare because we're afraid of frightening people. And we got to get across that nobody's going to be frightened into developing it.
It's almost like, oh, like, you don't worry about it. Like,
Yeah.
you just, that's kind of maybe why people say that sometimes. And like in an attempt to be helpful, but really it's actually unhelpful.
Yeah, seriously unhelpful, especially when like my story of being dismissed is not just my story, is what I found. Like, there are so many people that this has happened to, that they've just been dismissed over and over again. So this is a common thing that happens, more common than we think.
Absolutely. I think in particular, again, like, you've had two experiences of it. They were palpably different. One was, I don't think mild is the right word, but like one was less severe. It resolved on its own eventually. I cannot imagine that your experience is the only experience. I mean, we have interviewed at least one other person who said that they were essentially retroactively diagnosed with psychosis. So that has got to be, if you're not talking about it, if you're not telling your doctor, if your doctor doesn't know that that's the diagnosis, it's even arguably incorrect to say that it has the same rate of frequency as cerebral palsy. It could be more common. We literally do not know.
Exactly.
All three of us here have experienced one or more perinatal mental health complications that were undiagnosed because, for various reasons. And so, I mean, I think the numbers are definitely probably higher.
And there's much more knowledge now than there was 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And more people are trained now by PSI than were 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 20 years ago. But we are still not in a place where everyone has the knowledge that they need,
Definitely, 100%. But you guys are helping to spread awareness, and that's
I was just gonna say the same to you. I mean, we're on the podcast here. You've written this book to just really share your experience and now I can't get the analogy out of my head. I feel like I really have had a VR headset on. Like, I listened to your book. That's how I consume books. So I listened to it in my earbuds, and it really did feel like that because I didn't experience postpartum psychosis, and it's important to hear stories. And I don't know, before you experienced postpartum psychosis, did you know anybody else that had experienced that or heard of it before? Or
No, never. I had never, like, I was a psychology major. I had never heard of it. So that's why I was even like Googling like vile thoughts in the postpartum period. I was like, what can make you like think these weird kind of things that you don't want to think and,
Yep.
want to believe about yourself or anything like that. So yeah, I had never heard of it and I found it really shocking.
Same. That's relatable. I mean, I didn't know other people that had experienced postpartum anxiety or depression or OCD. I didn't even know what postpartum OCD was.
Yeah.
Until way, way postpartum, like maybe 8 years postpartum, when I finally started sharing with my therapist. So I think that that's common. If we're not hearing people talk about their lived experience, it's hard to bring it up in conversation and to even know how to say how I'm feeling. What's the correct terminology to use? What is this? Because for many of us, it feels like, I guess I'm just a terrible person. It feels like a character flaw when that is not true whatsoever.
Yeah. That's the worst thing about it. It just feels like it's a part of you. Like when you have a cold, you're like, this is not me. But when you have something like that, you feel like this is me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And it's really just something that's going on for you.
That is the most brilliant thing. If we thought about perinatal mental health in general, the same way that we think about a cold, do you always have a runny nose? Do you always cough like that? No.
Yeah, you're right. That is a good analogy.
And those things can be treated. And sometimes you have to use a multidisciplinary approach in order to properly treat these things. Like you can't just give an antibiotic. You got to give an antibiotic, and that person probably needs more sleep, and they might need to drink a little extra water, and they're not going to exercise today.
For sure.
Okay, so I just one more time want to say, please, please go get this book, listen to this book, read this book, because for me, especially pre second pregnancy for you,
Hmm.
everything that you were experiencing felt completely relatable. Like I could put myself in your shoes. I was like, I've felt that way. I've done that. I've thought that.
Hmm.
It takes a condition and it turns it on its head. Like I was relating viscerally to everything that you were talking about. So go read. Go read. This is your homework, guys.
The book is called A Mom Like That. I got it in audio format, and it's where else is it available?
I heard that libraries have it.
Great. Wow. No big deal.
Yeah, I've heard like a friend in Chicago was like, she saw it at the library. So
Oh
Yes.
my gosh. Is that wild?
it is kind of wild.
Like, have you gone to a bookstore and gone, holy cow, there it is?
No, I actually haven't done that.
Okay.
I should. I'm such a loser.
No.
No. Hey, okay, stop that.
That's like some people don't want to look at their own art. I mean, Danny can't even watch or hardly, well, she can listen to the pod episodes, but she
Excuse me.
cannot watch them. She can't. She's like, oh my gosh, look at me, look at my face, da 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 da.
Oh, I'm squirmy. Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Hey, thanks for
Sorry, calling you out.
on the internet. That's great.
I will go now that you said it. I mean, I see it on Amazon and stuff, but I'll actually go to a bookstore and be like, hey,
Go to a bookstore. You did a thing.
yeah.
And I'm sure somebody will pick it up and that like needs to see it. And thank you for being bold and saying, sharing such a personal thing. It's hard to say all the things out loud or on paper.
Or both.
Yeah, or all of the above.
Yeah, my hope is just that, you know what, like it could make somebody who's having those kinds of symptoms feel less alone if they had them, or family will read it and then be like, oh, like recognize what's happening in a loved one before things get bad. Because I think one of the things that people always are confused about is like when tragedy happens, they're always like, how did this happen? But the reality of the situation is that there were a lot of symptoms that were probably apparent but not
Mm-hmm.
understood for what they were before. Like it's not like somebody just wakes up and has a severe symptom and does something. Like in both cases, like there was a lot of stuff going on that if you were attuned to it you would have seen and recognized if you knew about it. And that's what my hope is, that by putting this out in the world that people will read it and be like more attuned to these kinds of things when they see it. I always say, in like I have an Instagram account, and I always one thing that I always share with people is that bizarre behavior in the postpartum period should never be ignored. Chances are somebody who's hallucinating or delusional, they might tell you that they're hallucinating, but chances are they might not tell you because they're just in that world experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
They might have reasons for, like, I had delusions that were like, oh, this is a secret, like between me and God kind of thing. But anything going on in a person's head, whether it be delusions or hallucinations that the person is experiencing, is going to manifest in that person behaving bizarrely as a result. I don't mean like with fear, because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm afraid. No, afraid is different from bizarre. Like bizarre is like, like constantly rolling on the floor. I know a woman who was psychotic and all she would do, she stopped walking. All she was doing was rolling around. Another woman was oiling her whole entire body with olive oil. That's what I mean. There's a difference between being afraid and engaging in bizarre behavior. Like me running around with my fingers in my ear in the mall. That's bizarre. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
talking back to like things that qualifies as bizarre, and bizarre behavior should never be ignored in the postpartum period.
I think this is a great transition to What was your experience seeking help? Were there enough moments of bizarre behavior, or were there enough moments of feeling like you weren't yourself, that your family was ready to take the next step and be pushier with doctors? Was it seeing the right doctor? Like, what was that watershed moment?
I think it was just there was a lot of bizarre behaviors, and I was reporting the bizarre behaviors because I was like, I feel like doing bad things to people and I don't want to. I'm hearing voices and things like that, and the doctors were just ignorant about it. I think maybe the watershed moment was probably when I asked one of the doctors. I basically just said I want to be hospitalized, like I want to be like locked up because I didn't want to harm anybody. I didn't want to harm myself, and I think that was probably the watershed moment at which, even though the doctor did dismiss me, I was finally able to get a referral to a psychiatrist. At least she put in the note for that referral. You know what I mean? And that's what really saved my life. To this day, I will always be indebted to that doctor, that psychiatrist, because at that point I was so gone into my delusions that I wasn't even saying things like that would help her to diagnose me, but she kind of trusted her gut. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end, she told me when I said, "Well, I wasn't saying that at that point, I wasn't saying I was hearing voices or anything like that because I was so far gone into them that I didn't recognize at all that they were odd." And my doctor just said, like, there was some look in your eye that made me feel like you were in another world communicating with something else while we were talking. And I'm so grateful that she just trusted her gut and started me on, even if it was a low dose, putting me on that low dose of antipsychotic medication is what, help things along, and then getting the proper dosage.
Yeah.
Yes. Do you remember how long it took to find the right dose? I feel like that is a common thread for anyone who is on medication.
Mm.
Was it difficult?
No, I would say that because I was started on the lowest dose because she thought she was warding off a psychotic episode, so she put me on
Mm.
this low tiny dose. But then I kept calling her with increasingly bizarre statements, and she amped it up. I would say within 2 weeks, I was like at the dose that you use to treat postpartum psychosis, and it was at that point, bam, like things just immediately started resolving for me.
That's so good.
Yeah.
What did it feel like as that was happening?
Well, it was so bizarre. Like in my book, I talk about it in terms of the number of pills I was consuming. So initially, she had prescribed me like one pill. And then by the time I hit the proper dose, it was 10 pills of antipsychotic medication, which was like, I think 300 or 350 milligrams of the antipsychotic. And I remember I was in the middle of a really serious delusion that the devil was going to force me to do stuff. And she said, take another 5 of these pills. And my friend dispensed these 5 pills out to me. And right at that moment, suddenly I realized like I was like, the fog around me just dissipated. And I was like, what am I thinking?
Mm.
It felt like fog was just like leaving me.
Mm.
In the book, I talk about it as magic pills because it literally felt like it altered my sense of reality. I'll always be grateful for those medications. They definitely have a place in society to help with severe mental illness for sure.
Yes. And I think it changes all of our appreciation, right? Like, I think all three of us have felt I'm not going to be severe enough to need that, or I don't want to be the type of person who needs that.
Mm.
And now we're all like, you know what? Meds, not so bad.
No, no, life saving.
Real handy.
Yeah, for sure. And there's so much fear around, especially around like I know there's a lot of stigma towards antidepressants, especially, in the postpartum period. And there's like super hate on for antipsychotic medication because people think about all these side effects. I have to be like honest in the sense that my family was not averse to me taking medication. They were like kind
Mhm.
of like, I think you need medication. But when I got on psychotic medication, they were like, oh, because they saw how like tired and lethargic and stuff I became. And then they were kind of like regretting me being on antipsychotic medication because they were like, you're such a lively person and now you're like
Mhm.
just sleeping all the time. But compared to what I was going through, it was such a mercy because when I was not sleeping and in that lethargic mode, like the things that were happening to me and that I was experiencing were so horrifying. Like I didn't want to be alive for it. You don't know the symptoms for which it's being used to treat. Do you know what I mean? Like you
Mhm.
don't know what the experience of those symptoms are. So So don't judge and say like, oh, it's making this person tired. It's making this person this or that. Like that might be a blessing compared to what they're actually experiencing without it.
Right.
Yeah, that's like the risk reward, right?
Hmm.
That yes, you had lethargy, but the reward far outweighed.
Yes.
So I was curious. I don't think we're giving too much away because you're here telling your story. So I just remember near the end of your book, you and your husband were you in therapy, and your therapist said, "Do you know her?" You were very talkative and bubbly, and he said, "Oh yeah, that's her." Like I assume that the kind of recovery process, like for everybody that experiences postpartum psychosis, is probably a different time frame. But do you remember how much time there was between like when you got your meds dialed in until you started to kind of feel more like yourself?
Yeah, I would say like within like a month.
Wow,
Yeah,
really?
it was really fast. I mean, typically with postpartum psychosis, what happens is that after the psychosis kind of resolves and stuff like that, you do get into a phase of where you have like the symptoms of postpartum depression for a while. But my personality and everything was back within like a month. And my doctor was like so concerned because this was such a different person than the one she met.
Right.
She literally asked my husband, "Is this your wife?" Because she was concerned that,
You know who this is right here?
yeah.
And he was like, "Yep.
Yeah,
Yep."
this is the wife that I know. So the one thing I wanted to point out is that in most cases, postpartum psychosis, it's bipolar based, meaning that people with
Mm.
postpartum
Mhm.
psychosis experience symptoms of mania, right? And so in most
Yes.
cases, that's why 50% of women that have pre-existing bipolar are you're at an increased risk of having postpartum psychosis.
Can you tell us a little bit about mania?
Yeah.
Just for our listeners, what is mania?
So mania is like symptoms of like super hyperactivity, just like so talking so fast, excitable, massive amounts of thoughts like running through your head. So mostly manic people don't want to sleep because they're so high energy and like doing all these things.
Got it.
And that's usually the presentation of postpartum psychosis. Like people will have manic symptoms. I did not have any mania. So mine was like I had severe postpartum depression that developed psychotic features, which is also a form of postpartum psychosis. So I had no mania. It's also different medications that are oftentimes used to treat, like, if you have mania, then you probably need a mood stabilizer. And if you have the depression version, you need an antidepressant, an antipsychotic medication. So my doctor, like when she first met me, I was like slow, like so slow
Mm.
talking, my movements, because I was like super depressed. And then when I came back to my baseline, she was like, "Who is this person?"
Wow, this is different. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did want to point out that, postpartum psychosis usually has like they consider it like a version of bipolar in most cases, and it's always looked at as like bipolar underlying it.
An onset, right?
Yeah, unless there's evidence to show that there was no bipolar. And in my case, it was easy for my doctor to see that because she was like, you just had it in your first pregnancy, but super depressed, and then had psychotic elements, and then came out of it, nothing else. And then, again. So my doctor said, you're allergic to pregnancy.
Mm.
So outside of that, I have no pre-existing or no mental health issues, but it's just that pregnancy seems to trigger postpartum psychosis in me. The aftermath of pregnancy, I should say.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Are we ready for a lightning round?
Anytime you're ready.
I'm ready if you're ready.
Let's do it.
Let's jump in. Dun, dun, dun. Aisha, besides this podcast, what is your second favorite podcast if you consume them?
I've thought about this because I know that you guys asked this question, and you know what? I hope this makes you happy. But this is my first and second favorite podcast. It's the only podcast I've listened to. Yay!
Okay.
Oh, thanks. Aisha's the favorite, guys.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, there you go. I thought you guys wouldn't be happy with it, but I'm glad you're happy with that answer.
We're happy with it. No, there's no wrong answers here in the lightning round.
Okay. My question, are you currently binge watching or binge listening to anything that we need to put in our queue? It does not have to be mental health related, preferably junkie TV. Go.
I don't know if anybody will start following me in this, but I've been watching Unsolved Mysteries.
Oh,
Okay.
Like the vintage Unsolved Mysteries or
No, the new one.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Because I kind of see myself as like a bit of a couch sleuth. So I'm like,
Oh.
watched all these episodes and now I'm like, what happened at Roswell? Were there aliens?
Right.
You're like a private eye.
Why were all those cattle mutilated? Like, I don't know. It's like,
Mm-hmm. You're going to get to the bottom of that.
yeah.
Unsolved Mysteries. The reboot. So they have basically rebooted Unsolved Mysteries and brought it to the 21st century.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So
Okay.
Wow.
I know it's garbage TV, but still.
No.
Hey, listen.
Hey, whatever you like is fine.
We're not going to yuck your yum, as they say.
What is your best parenting hack?
Oh, so my favorite thing that I did, I love to nap. Okay, so I'm like, napping is my favorite hobby.
Oh.
You're speaking Danny's language.
Yeah, so.
Hey, rude.
I actually have to take a nap every day after work. So what I used to do when my daughter was little was, because, preschoolers, they don't really like napping. So I was like, what am I supposed to do? So I thought my daughter is very competitive. So I always used to say that we were going to have a nap contest. So I would say, okay, let's have a nap contest. And I'd be like, she'd be like, no, I'm going to sleep first. And I'd be like, I'm already asleep.
Oh, you brought humor into it too. So
yeah.
it took some of the struggle up.
Yeah. Then she'd go down for a nap so quick. And, we'd compare notes as to who napped faster when we woke up. So.
Dang, why didn't I think of that 15 years ago? Shoot.
Yeah. That would have really helped a lot.
It would have been really nice if we knew Aaisha then. Hey,
you could have got your naps.
We need to trade parenting hacks.
Yeah.
Dang it.
Well, my next question does tie into that because we are talking about going back in time a little bit. What is one thing that today if you could hop into a time machine and tell yourself something that you needed to hear, what would you say to pre-recovery you?
That what happened to you was never your fault and you deserved better health care than you received.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a big hug.
Not getting that really made me, just feel like maybe it was my fault. And, so I think I've resolved that issue, but that's what I would have liked to have heard.
Oh, that's a good one. Everybody needs to hear that.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm having a moment. Okay. Next question. Let's see. How are you going to show yourself, or maybe you've already done this, a little bit of radical love today? And radical could be anything.
I think I'll have enough time to make it to Baskin Robbins and have 2 scoops of ice cream.
Oh God, yes.
Snap.
That's it. That's what I
have those 2 scoops.
I am also team ice cream every day.
Every day.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like one of your main food groups, right?
Yes.
You got to check it off the list every day.
Yeah.
Cheese and ice cream.
Follow-up question. This is off script, but critical. What are the 2 scoops that are in your cone?
Ooh.
What flavors?
I don't know if you guys have it in America. It's chocolate mousse royale.
Oh, what's in that? Chocolate ice cream?
It's like dark chocolate. The dark chocolate is actually not a very hard ice cream. It's like a mousse. It's very soft.
Oh.
It has like nuggets of chocolate in it.
Dang. So you're going to get 2 scoops of that.
Yeah, the texture is so good. Just like the soft and then the little nuggets. Oh, I've heard it doesn't exist in America. So too bad to you guys.
Hey.
Dear Baskin Robbins US, step it up.
Yeah, step up the game.
All right. Final question. How can folks get a hold of you?
I think the best way people can get a hold of me is through my Instagram. My handle is at Aaisha Alvi Writes.
And we will put a link to that in the show notes so people can follow you on
Insta.
Yeah. You know what we didn't ask Aaisha, though?
Mm-hmm.
We have one more final question that Emily loves asking everybody that we haven't asked.
It is my favorite question. Do you want to ask it this time?
Let's just keep things spicy. Sure, I'll ask this time. All right. How do you take your water? Bubbles? No bubbles? Room temperature? Flavor?
I got this. Coconut water.
Coconut water!
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's good stuff.
That's the only way to take it.
Oh, the only way to take your water
This is a bold statement, guys.
is by drinking coconut water.
Yeah,
You heard it here first.
that's right.
Cool. Well, way to stay hydrated.
And I just wanted to let people know who are listening who do listen to the show that I just very cursorily gave a very brief summary of what my book is about. There's a lot more in there, and I kept it really mild for the show.
Mm-hmm.
I think that you guys, if you read my book, you'll know that, there's a lot more stuff that happens, but, I tried to keep it nice and kosher.
Yes, you dig deep in that book in a way that I think is really important.
Yeah. Bold and brave and important to share.
And thank you guys so much for the opportunity to come on.
Absolutely. Emily, you want to take us out?
Yeah, Aaisha, thank you so much for sharing your story. Thank you for putting it into writing so that we can consume it in all the ways that it needs to be consumed, because it is so important to talk about the spectrum of experiences that is postpartum psychosis. So thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you so much again, both of you.
Thanks for tuning in to the I Am One podcast. Check out today's show notes where we'll drop links to all the important things that we mentioned in this episode. Please consider sharing about I Am One on social media and following and rating our show wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. It only takes a minute of your time and, well, that'll help our collective mission of bringing resources and local support to folks worldwide. From everyone here at PSI, thanks again for listening.